Hey guys, thank you for joining us today. We have an amazing man with us today. His name is Sherman. He's going to tell us a little bit about himself and what he does. So without further ado, I'm just going to let him get into it. I'll ask the first question. Sherman, just for the people, can you give us a little background on who you are and what it is you do and just kind of what got you inspired?
So my name is Sherman Daly. Actually, I work with my wife. What we do, we help couples restore their marriages, strengthen and fortify their relationship with each other and with God. Um, we have a website, Marriage Restoration Ministry, and a couple Facebook groups, Redeem Your Marriage, on Facebook. Um, how did I get here? Actually, my wife and I we got married several years ago, about 12 or so years ago, and she was everything I prayed for. God answered all my questions, not my question, he answered all my prayers. She came with the whole package and more, and it was awesome. Loved it. 3.5 years later, we separated. We had a lot of conflict, a lot of problems trying to communicate and being on the same page. A year later, we got a divorce, and we were divorced for 3 years. And during that time, I went back to Lord, I don't know what to do. And he says, you need to learn to understand your wife. So I started learning. Anyway, fast forward 3 years in, we start where we kind of decide to try and restore our relationship. We got some counseling. We sat down, we went through it, we learned, we studied, and it was in that process I was amazed. Just the answers are here. We just don't know it. So anyway, we got remarried in 2020. It's been the best it's ever been. And a few months in, I start realizing at that point I could make a comparison to where I was compared to where I was to where I was before compared to where I was at that time. And I kind of realized like I didn't hear anyone giving me any hope when I was struggling. You know, I heard a lot of, oh, just she's not worth it. Go find another person, or they don't care anymore. I heard all the negative news. I didn't hear the positive. Okay. I didn't hear it's fixable. I didn't hear you can make this work. And as I started to learn, because I didn't, even though we got married, I decided I'm not going to stop learning. I kept on growing and learning, gathering information. And I realized that the answers are all there. It's just that we don't know about it and people aren't talking about it. And the more I went along, the Lord started showing me it's like, there's a huge need here. There's a lot of people hurting, in their relationship and don't know what to do, and don't realize that what they're dealing with is fixable.
Yeah.
And, and that just kind of ripped my heart because, Lord showed me Hosea 4:6. He says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. We're struggling because we don't know what we don't know. And people don't know what they don't know. I mean, marriage has been here, thousands of years. And there's a boatload of wisdom out there to make it work. And I start realizing if you go searching for help, it's there. So what really motivated me to do what I'm doing now was kind of that, just realizing that there's a huge need. And I started learning, I'm still learning. There's still more. It's been 4 years in and our relationship keeps getting better, but I keep learning more. And there's so much more. I don't want to stop. I mean, it's getting good. I want it to be not just good, I want it to be great. I want it to be so awesome. And that's one of the things I realized. So people don't set goals in their marriage. They just come in and they just go with the status quo and it never gets any better. And they just complain to their friends, but they don't do anything. So that was kind of that the driving force that drove us. Now we coach as a couple and we love it. We learn in the process and we get to help all these people who are hurting. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's beautiful. It's definitely a powerful mission.
Yes.
Um, I can see a lot of. I really like how you mentioned they don't really set goals. It's just kind of, oh, we're married. That's
Yeah,
the end goal. They
yeah,
don't
we
grow
can be
together.
happy.
Yeah. So next question here. That's amazing. So how do you do this? Do you have a process that you guys use?
Um, yes, we do. We have like a 5-step process that we walk couples through to help them to develop the skills, build a connection, create peace or harmony. Uh, I'll say this, one of the things that's unique about how we look at the relationship is there's a 3 phase. One, your needs. Okay, it's interesting. Everybody always talk about, when they get a divorce, the first thing they said, my needs weren't being met. But we don't know how to talk about needs. We kind of have this needs shame in our society. We're afraid to ask for our needs, but then one, we don't know how to ask for it. And the other thing is the mindset, how you think about your relationship. And then you have the skills. And I have a diagram on my website, restoredmarriages.com, that kind of outlines what that looks like. But those are 3 main phases. There's a needs, which drives people. Okay, how you think about it is going to determine how you act, which is usually your skills. And we find we have to address all 3 in order for there to be that lasting loving relationship. Because when it comes to how you think, you have patterns, you have habits, and you have ways of doing things, okay, that we've developed based on our life and how we've learned. And then we have the skills. Most of us are lacking the skills. As Christians, we have the knowledge. We go read the Bible. It's full of knowledge, right? But we don't know how to live out the word of God, which is where the problem is. So there's a lot of people, I love my spouse. How do I make her feel loved by me? Notice I didn't say, how do I love her? How do I make her feel loved by me? And
Yes.
that's a problem that we have as couples. Oh, I love my wife, but does she feel loved by you? There's a
Yeah.
difference. And because the difference is other focus. And that's a thing, I found as I started growing and learning, the Lord showed me in the Bible before there was sin, they were both other centered. They were created to make each other, to meet the needs in each other, because Adam had a need for companionship. So her job was to meet his need, and his was to meet hers. So they were other centered, but when they sinned, they became self centered. So selfishness came in. And we've been living with that for how many years? But the only way to make marriage work is when you're other centered. Because when you're
Yeah.
others, the person feel fulfilled and they want to make you feel fulfilled. It's just a natural process. But most people it's all about me and what I feel. And especially when you're struggling, you're feeling all your negativity. So, but basically, what we do is we help them to understand what their needs are. How do we meet the needs as friends, as partners, as an intimate couple, right? You
Yeah.
address that out. How do you think about your relationship, and how do you the skills, and how do you communicate love? How do you react? How do you talk? How do you communicate in such a way that the person feels loved? So we deal with those 3 main areas of a relationship because we find that those seem to address all the difficult things that comes along. It's just kind of the quick synopsis of the process.
No, I appreciate it. And that's really an amazing way to think about it. I like how you said, how can I make them feel loved?
Right.
Because I might be pouring myself into a person, and that's something I hear a lot too in my practice is, I'm doing everything for this person, but they're still not, basically they're not reacting the way that I want them to react.
Right.
And have you ever taken a second to just ask them what they want
Yeah.
or what they need? I'm doing all this stuff. It's like, well, maybe they don't want roses. Maybe they don't want. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And that is one of the things that we find. It's like we tend to treat people the way we want to be treated, and they need to be treated the way they want to be treated. And sometimes
yes.
we don't, it takes a while to catch that concept. But once you do, you find that you have a happier spouse.
Right, it's right. And maybe it's just something as simple as turning off the TV and just talking to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So very cool, very cool. So next question here. This has been an incredible journey that sounds like you've been on.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there were a lot of things that were kind of holding you back. So can you kind of walk us through some of those things that held you back?
Um, Gosh, it- it's it's funny because when you are, I just did something recently untriggered, but when when things happen in your relationship and you're frustrated, um, a lot of times we get caught up in our head. We get caught up in our own thoughts and what we're feeling, and it's hard to see clearly what needs to be done. Um, and there was times when I didn't know what to do, and because I didn't know what to do, I didn't do anything. And a lot of people are at that point where they don't know what to do, and rather than do something, they just don't do anything because they don't know what to do. And it's it's so simple to ask for help, but we're afraid to ask for help. I know as men, one of the things is, statistically, men are not in favor of going to get counseling or coaching. Um, and that is, that's not really a good thing, right? And that's not the way you want it to be, because you're not going to get any solutions if you don't take any action. I know one of the big things for me was held me back. I didn't want to go to counseling. No, I counseled in the past with my wife, but that didn't turn out well. And so from that point, I'm like, you know what? Until she says that she needs help for her, I'm not going to go to counseling. Because what I was hearing is, let's go to counseling to fix you. And that's been one of those things that really keeps a lot of couples out of getting help, because one
Mm,
spouse feels like the only purpose we're going is so they can fix me. And the reality is, in any relationship, I don't care who you are, you both need to change something, because you're both
yeah,
fit into the problem. And unless you see that we're both going to get help, nobody wants to go, because everybody thinks, and I think the past year my wife's been complaining about this, you know. So what do I think I'm going to hear when we go to counseling? More complaints, and now you're going to get the counselor to be on your side against me. And there's been counseling sessions where people have done that, and that makes it even worse, right? Because in reality, no, none of us, Bible says none of us is right. No, not one. So we're all wrong. We just need to learn where we're contributing to the problem, how to resolve it, which means that I'm going to have to go in and learn what I'm not doing right. She's going to have to learn what she's not doing right. And at the end of the day, we need to learn what we both need to do right. And so I
yeah,
think that's one of the big things that hold people back, the fear that we're not going to solve the problem. It's blame. They're going to blame me because she's been blaming me at home. So I can't expect, I'm just going to go out and get someone else now to add to the fire.
yeah. No, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
It all probably seems directed at one person, but something I heard that was really powerful from my pastor on this topic was you got to remember that you love this person.
Right.
So like the point of a conversation isn't to win. The
Hmm.
point of it is to grow.
Right.
And if you're if you're using counseling as a form of spitefulness, you're doing it in spite of someone, you're trying to win.
Mhm.
It's not you that if one person wins, the relationship loses.
Right. Yeah.
So you just got to remember at the end of the day, it's this is a person that you love,
Right.
and if they grow, then you grow. So
It's
That's
interesting you
really
said
cool.
'cause I I often mention this and I'll share it. One of the things I learned about conflict, because we had so many of it, was to realize, and Lord showed me, conflict is not designed to tear you apart. That's how the world looks at conflict. Conflict is something you avoid. In a marriage, you don't avoid conflict. Okay. Conflict reveals where there's a disconnect in your relationship.
Mhm.
Problem we've had is all our conflict scenarios has not been pleasurable. But the benefit of conflict in your relationship, James 1, 2 to 4 talks about that. Um, it's designed to make you whole and complete. It's designed to cause you to grow, like you're saying. When you're in the conflict, obviously it's difficult to try and resolve everything. But here's the key with conflict. After the conflict, revisit the conversation where you're not triggered, you're not angry, nobody's upset, and everything's nice, and you're sitting talking. Honey, what happened the other night? Why were you so angry at me? And what were you thinking? And you begin to start have those after conversations. That's where you learn and grow because
Yeah.
that's where you can say, well, the way you said that to me got me upset. And the other one can say, well, what do you mean it got you upset? Well, you used all these you terms, you this, you this, you this, you this. So all I heard was what was wrong with me. I didn't hear what you were feeling. And then the other person, but I was telling you I was hurt. Yeah, but all I heard was everything that was wrong with me. So see, you can talk through the conversation and you start realizing, oh, I just didn't say that right. Okay, maybe I need to say
Yeah.
it. And you begin to learn, okay, so each conflict you have can get you closer and say, okay, so we were really not agreeing on this thing. And it's funny, a lot of times you'll find out that even though you're in conflict, you're both saying the same thing, just a different way. But you don't learn those things unless you have the after conversation where you reflect on what happened. And and most people don't do that, so they avoid the conflict, right? They avoid because
Mhm.
it's difficult to deal with. I don't want to go there again. But then it kind of tears you apart because
Mhm.
now rather than getting closer together, you start avoiding interacting with each other rather than learning each other. So it becomes a destructive force. So, but I always tell people conflicts are designed to show you where you're disconnected. It's not designed to tear you apart. But when you start learning, okay, so we're not in sync here, and you start to fix them. I'll give you a good example of something simple. My wife and I were traveling a lot, and when we're traveling, I like to pack and do things a certain way. So I came and I pack up my stuff, and I'm doing things. She likes to do things her way too. Okay. So she puts stuff by the door. I'm like, it's by the door, it's ready to go in the car. I move it to the car. Then she freaks out. I wasn't done with it yet. I'm like, then why is it by the door? Right. So we had this one big argument, the whole thing, because of how we were doing things. So on the way there, we started talking about, what happened, and she told me how she thought. Okay, so I said, okay, so here, let's do this. If you put it by the door, it means it goes out. But we made an agreement how things. Okay, you lay things out, I'll pack it up because I'm faster at packing. Okay, but you organize things better. So we made an agreement. The next trip, boom. There was no argument. There was no fight. We were like an oil machine because we understood
Mhm.
each other and we agreed. But if we didn't have the conversation, we'd probably have another fight the next trip.
Right.
And that's kind of like a simple example of, when there's conflicting situations, it's opportunity to learn and understand each other and how we function. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's well put. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful way to look at it. And I was just thinking about that too, the other day, that conflict, when you have that conflict, when you have that uncomfortable situation with another person, what happens is you grow together.
Yeah.
You grow together because now you've both you both made it through that difficult thing.
Yeah.
And there's a quote that I like is that the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb,
Mm,
which just means this is sort of a thing going back to like high school football.
mhm,
Talk about bonding with someone and something that creates a very strong bond. And I teach this in my men's coaching is nothing creates a stronger bond than shared misery.
mm,
Because only you and the people who went through that with you understand what it was to go through that. And I think in
right.
relationships, you either grow together or you grow apart.
Right.
And like you said, conflict that doesn't happen, conflict that's not resolved, just drives a wedge between you.
Yeah, it
But
does.
it's actually just it's a beautiful thing. And I want anyone listening to just think about this. Think about a time you had to have an uncomfortable conversation with someone. What happened with your relationship after that? Was it actually stronger or was it worse? And think about some of those conflicts that you didn't have and think about what that did. And are you still thinking about that, the conversation that you need to be having?
Mm,
Just in my experience, when I had those uncomfortable conversations, it was a beautiful thing because we always ended up getting closer. So just a side question I want to ask you on that is, you know, in marriage or in any relationship, what advice would you give to someone if their partner just isn't, they're just not willing to be open-minded to just listening to how you're feeling?
okay. They're not willing to be open-minded or listen to you. They don't feel heard by you. In other words, so let me put it to you this way. Okay. If you give someone what they want, or need, there's usually more of an opportunity or a willingness on that person's part to reciprocate. Okay. When someone won't give you what you want, it's because they have a need. In other words, there's a concept we call a cup being full. So their cup is full. Okay. So let's say I have this jug here. Okay. And it's full of water. And you try and put some more water in it. What do you think is going to happen? It's gonna flow.
Overflows.
Okay. When their cup is full, in other words, um, when they're filled with whatever they're dealing with, it doesn't matter what you give them, they won't hear you. Right? So what you have to do is you have to empty their cup or empty their cup. So let them unpack. And when they're completely unpacked, now they have room for what you have to say. So typically what happens in those scenarios when people get to that point is they've been trying to communicate with you for quite a while or feel like there's things that you're not listening to them on. So they get to a point where all that's built up, they don't want to hear anything from you. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so they've shut you out because what they're feeling is you don't care about me and what I care about. So I can't care about you if you don't care about me. So and it's okay. Now, as men, this is important. Okay. As men, you're the leader. It's my job to sit on my emotion and let my wife express who she is and what she's dealing with and listen to her. Let her decompress. Let her get everything off her chest and just listen. Problem is we rebuttal. She never gets to finish what she's saying. Because it may come across as accusation and she points out all our faults. Doesn't matter. The job is not, it's not about you at that point. It's about the other person. But if you allow them to fully express everything and let them just unwind, get it all out, and when they're all done, okay, they'll feel a lot better. Here's the thing that my pastor taught me this, and I'll never forget this. You will do one or two things, and I guarantee it never fails. You will either talk it out or you'll act it out.
Ooh, that's good.
People never get that. If it doesn't come out in words, it's going to come out in actions. And it may be
Mhm.
whatever it may be. And you see people walk in the room and you can tell when there's something wrong between them because
Yes.
body language, their act, it's whatever it is, they're not talking, but you see in the actions. And it's a fundamental rule. God didn't design us to keep all that crap in. Okay. So we need to learn how to express what we're feeling, especially us as men. We're not as
Mhm.
articulate as our wives. They tend to communicate more, and a lot of times we get in a fuss and they run rings around us. But it still doesn't matter in a conversation. Okay, whether you're articulate or not. Expression, we all need to feel heard. This is three things that we all need: to be heard, to be understood, to be
Mhm.
okay.
Yep.
And I guarantee you look beyond any conflict, one of those things is not being met. Either the person don't feel heard, they don't feel like you understand them, or they don't feel like you value them. I guarantee you, check your conflicts. The next time you have one of those three things are violated. And catch this. Those are the same three things God gives us. He hears us, values us, and he understands us.
Mhm.
And it's critical. You don't feel love unless you have those.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter, male or female, it doesn't matter. Okay, we all need those three things. And when we don't get it, we have resentment, we have hurt, we have conflicts because we're lacking. We need those three things. You think of anybody in your life who's ever loved you, they gave you those. Either they were very understanding, they valued you a lot, and they listened to you. And see, so back to you. I kind of drifted off and different concepts, but they kind
No,
of.
it's okay.
But if someone is feeling that the person doesn't want to hear you or doesn't want to give you time of day, understand the problem is the very thing that you want is what they're not getting from you.
Yeah. I've heard that.
Yeah.
I've heard that. Which what you want in this life is the number one thing you need to be given.
Yes.
And
You want to know something
yeah.
funny? I found this in my relationship, and it kind of blew me away. And I coach a lot of couples. The very same thing that you're experiencing, your spouse is experiencing it, but guess what? It's for a different, it's how do I put it? Um, it's for different reasons. So for me, it may be for one reason, for her, maybe a different reason. Okay, because she's looking at me and seeing what she's not getting. I'm looking at her, seeing what I'm not getting. So we're not looking at the same thing, but guess what we're experiencing? We're both experiencing the same thing. I need to feel
Yeah.
heard. She needs to feel heard. She feels like she's not being understood. I feel like I'm not being understood. But we're doing it for different reasons because we're different people. But you don't see that unless you're willing to let go of what you're feeling to kind of see and receive the other person. Uh,
Yes.
Now, that doesn't mean that what you're feeling is not valid, just to let you know. It just means that you need to it's got to start with somebody. Okay. And you need to be able to take the risk to say, okay, I'm going to do this for my spouse. I'm going to, sit down and just say, tell me everything you're feeling. There's a little, we have a tool that I use for couples. I call it's a need tool. And if you DM me, I could share it with any of your audience. Um, but basically it's a little document that walks you through how do you do what we call it's a need, but it's a time where you set amount of time, like say 10-15 minutes each, and one sits and just talks about whatever is on their heart. The other person just listen. You can clarify, there's no rebuttal, just listen. Okay. Sometimes it's like the first time in years one couple's ever just listened to the other person without chatting. And It's great for developing vulnerability because the other person knows they can say what's on their heart and they're not going to be chastised or get talked down or whatever. Because the rule is the other person can't say anything, they just listen. And then you switch. But when you switch, you can't rebuttal either. It's just talking about what you're feeling, okay? And just letting it out. And the other person
Yeah.
just listen. And it's amazing the difference it makes. Because
Yeah.
we don't realize that we don't really listen to each other. We're in a world where there's constant noise, and very few people care enough to say what's on your heart. And we
Mhm.
walk around with all these feelings that we feel like no one cares and no one ever listens to me.
Yeah. And yeah, that's really powerful. And one of those things that I kind of do in my coaching practice is very similar to you. I teach men just some core needs. And when you understand these core needs, it makes you an intentional listener.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those things that I help men do just for themselves is just listen to yourself and, understand if whatever it is, I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm never going to get there. Listen to yourself and just dig a few layers deeper. Where is that coming from? Like
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
which core need about yourself is not being met? And
Right.
when you can do that, sometimes it just takes understanding yourself
Yeah.
as a human to understand the person next to you.
Yeah.
Um, that's any relationship, whether it's a marriage or a friendship or anything.
Right.
It's really important.
You make an excellent point because we don't take a lot of time to really understand ourselves. We
Mhm.
just kind of take things for granted. There's a lot of things that we've been programmed to doing that we've never stopped and asked myself, why am I doing that? Does it really work for me? And we do things without thinking. And then when you have someone there who's with you 24 hours, they see it. It's like, and they point it out. And then you get mad at them because they pointed out because no one else has pointed it out before. And you think she's the problem because she's telling you stuff about you because she cares. And you
Yeah.
get defensive because you're complaining about me. But the problem's always been there. Nobody's ever had the guts or nobody's been close enough.
Yes. Mhm. That's what it is.
Yes. And we get hurt because we think we're okay because no one ever said anything. And the truth is, nobody cared enough to tell you before.
Yes. That's something I teach is the most loving thing anyone can do for someone else is to tell them the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the truth hurts, but I always say uh, God's formula for growth, well, his formula for growth is faith plus action, but the way that you get there, God's formula is short-term pain now, long-term pleasure later.
Yes.
But as humans in the world, which is inhabited by the enemy, the world likes to feed us this lie that you can have short-term pleasure and just pleasure all the time, but really it's short-term pleasure now for long-term pain later.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the only way to grow is to understand the truth, which is why definitions I think are so important. Just
Yeah.
defining what's going on with me. What is it that's making me a human? And
Right.
what are these core needs?
Now, otherwise, we go with the default. And a lot of times you look at the default and start realizing that's not real. The default is a
Yeah,
facade.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, this has been just a tremendous conversation. I hope all of the listeners have gotten a lot out of this. Guys, if you need any help with your relationship, with your marriage, I highly encourage you to reach out to Sherman. That being said, Sherman, how do we reach out to you?
I have a Facebook group, Redeem Your Marriage on Facebook. It's a good way. You can also reach me at Facebook. My handle is Shermware. Um, and we have a website, restoredmarriages.com. Feel free to check it out. You can DM me or DM Cameron if you got questions, would like to talk. Um, would love to do that. Love sharing what God's taught me. That's my heart's desire. So yeah, I would love to connect with you. If anyone's interested, and I talked about the knee to knee, if they're interested in that, just do a DM and I'll try and send you that document. You can practice it with your spouse or significant other. That'd be a good one.
Yeah, that would be awesome to have. Well, Sherman, thank you so much for your time. And as always, men, we will see you on the next one.
Thanks, Cameron.